The doorbell rang at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, which was unusual because nobody visited me anymore. Not since Maya left 6 months ago, taking half our furniture and all of my trust with her. I'd grown accustomed to the silence of my apartment, finding strange comfort in the emptiness she'd created. When I opened the door, there she stood. Maya looked different somehow, smaller maybe, or perhaps just diminished by whatever journey had brought her back to my doorstep. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her designer handbag clutched against her chest like a shield. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Hi, David," she whispered, her voice cracking on my name. I stood there, hands still on the doorknob, processing the surreal sight of my wife, my estranged wife, standing in the hallway we'd walked through together 1,000 times before. The hallway where she'd kissed me goodbye that morning 6 months ago, promising she just needed some space to figure things out. The same hallway I'd later learned she'd walked through on her way to meet Brandon, her colleague, her confidant, her lover. "What are you doing here, Maya?" I managed to ask, my voice flat and emotionless. I'd practiced this neutrality in the mirror, preparing for the day she might return, though I'd never truly believed it would come. "Can I come in, please? I know I don't deserve it, but I need to talk to you." Tears began streaming down her cheeks, and I recognized the manipulation even as some treacherous part of my heart twisted at the sight. This was the woman I'd loved since college, the woman I'd built a life with for 8 years, 3 of them married. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She walked past me, and I caught the scent of her perfume, different from before, something new she must have started wearing during our separation. Even her perfume felt like a betrayal, a reminder that she'd lived an entire life I knew nothing about. She stood in the living room, looking around at the changes I'd made. The new couch I'd bought after she took our old one. The walls I'd repainted a darker shade of grey. The absence of her photographs, her decorative pillows, her presence. "You redecorated," she observed quietly. "You took half the furniture. I had to fill the space somehow." She flinched at my words, then turned to face me fully. "David, I made a terrible mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I've spent the last 6 months thinking about nothing but you, about us, about what I threw away." I crossed my arms, leaning against the wall, maintaining distance between us. "That's interesting. Because from what I heard, you spent the last 6 months living in Brandon's downtown loft." Her face paled. "How did you?" "Sarah told me." Sarah, Maya's sister, who'd been appalled by her siblings' behavior and had kept me informed out of a sense of familial guilt. "She thought I deserved to know the truth, even if you couldn't give it to me." Maya's tears flowed harder now. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." It was a moment of weakness that spiraled out of control. Brandon and we worked together so much, and you were always busy with your startup, and I felt lonely, Anne. "And so you decided sleeping with your coworker was the solution?" I interrupted, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. 6 months ago, this conversation would have destroyed me. I'd cried enough tears to fill an ocean, punched enough walls to bruise my knuckles, drunk enough whiskey to pickle my liver. But somewhere along the way, I'd found something more valuable than our marriage. I'd found myself again. "It wasn't like that," she protested weakly. "Then what was it like, Maya? Explain it to me." Because from where I stood, my wife came home one day, said she needed a break to find herself, moved out within a week, and shacked up with another man. That's what it looked like to me. She sank onto my new couch, burying her face in her hands. "You're right. You're absolutely right. There's no excuse for what I did. But David, I'm here now because I realized something crucial. Brandon wasn't what I needed. This whole experience made me understand what I had, what I lost. You're my soulmate, David. You always have been. I was just too blind and stupid to see it." The word soulmate hung in the air between us like a bad joke. 6 months ago, that word would have meant everything. Now it felt hollow, performative, calculated. But I didn't interrupt. I needed to hear where this was going, needed to understand what had brought her back to my door with tears in her eyes and desperation in her voice. Because something told me this wasn't about love at all. Maya looked up at me with those green eyes that had once made my heart skip, now just making me feel tired. She patted the couch cushion beside her, an invitation I had no intention of accepting. Instead, I moved to the armchair across from her. The one she'd always complained was too stiff and uncomfortable. It suited me fine now. "Tell me about this revelation," I said, settling into the chair. "This sudden realization that I'm your soulmate. When exactly did that strike you?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. That detail felt important somehow, though I couldn't articulate why. My own ring sat in a drawer in my bedroom, removed 3 months ago when I'd finally accepted that our marriage was truly over. "It's been building for a while," she began, her voice taking on that earnest quality she used when she really wanted to convince someone of something. I'd seen her use this tone in business meetings, when negotiating with contractors for our apartment renovations, when explaining to her mother why we couldn't make it for Christmas. At first, with Brandon, everything felt exciting and new. He was attentive and spontaneous, everything I thought I wanted. "Must have been nice," I said dryly. She had the decency to wince. "I'm trying to be honest with you, David. You wanted to know what happened, so I'm telling you. Yes, at first it was exciting. But after a few weeks, I started to realize that excitement isn't the same as substance. Brandon is fun, but he's not deep. He doesn't understand me the way you do. We'd have these conversations that just skimmed the surface of everything. He never asked about my mother's health or remembered that I hate cilantro or knew that I needed silence in the morning before I could face the day. I watched her performance with a strange sense of detachment, like I was observing a play where I already knew the ending. So Brandon was disappointing. That's why you're here. No. She leaned forward, earnestness radiating from every pore. I'm here because I realized I was chasing something that didn't exist. I was so focused on what I thought was missing from our marriage that I couldn't see everything that was right about it. You know me, David. You really, truly know me. We built a life together. We have history, memories, a foundation that can't be replicated. Had, I corrected quietly. We had a life together. You demolished that foundation pretty thoroughly when you moved in with Brandon. I know. Her voice broke again, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. This time they looked genuine, but I'd learned that authenticity was easy to fake when you wanted something badly enough. I know I destroyed everything. But foundations can be rebuilt, can't they? Stronger than before. We could go to couples therapy, work through this together. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, David. I want to fight for us. The irony wasn't lost on me. 6 months ago, I would have given anything to hear these words. I'd begged her not to leave, promised we could work through whatever was wrong, suggested therapy then. She'd looked at me with cold eyes and said, "Some things can't be fixed, David. I need to do this for myself." As if abandoning our marriage was some form of self-care. "Where's Brandon in all this?" I asked, watching her face carefully. "Does he know you're here, declaring me your soulmate?" She looked away, and there it was, the crack in the facade I'd been waiting for. Brandon and we're taking some time apart. Taking time apart, I repeated slowly, tasting the familiar phrase. Interesting choice of words. The same ones you used with me 6 months ago. It's not the same thing, she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? You took a break from me to explore things with Brandon. Now you're taking a break from Brandon to explore things with me again. I'm starting to see a pattern, Maya. She stood abruptly, moving toward me with her hands outstretched. David, please. I know how this looks, but I'm being sincere. I made a catastrophic mistake. I threw away the best thing in my life for a fantasy that turned out to be empty. I'm not asking you to forgive me immediately or to take me back right now. I just want a chance to prove that I've changed, that I understand what I lost. I remained seated, not taking her hands. What happened with Brandon? Specifically, did you have a fight? Did he cheat on you? Did the exciting new relationship lose its shine when reality set in? Her hands dropped to her sides. Why does it matter? Because it matters to me whether you're here because you genuinely regret losing our marriage or because your backup plan didn't work out." The words hung between us, sharp and accusatory. Maya's face cycled through emotions, hurt, anger, shame, before settling on a kind of resigned sadness. "Brandon got a job offer in Seattle," she said finally. "He asked me to move with him, and I realized I didn't want to. I couldn't imagine leaving everything here, leaving you. That's when I understood that what I was looking for was right here all along." I laughed, a short, bitter sound that surprised even me. "So Brandon was willing to commit to you, to build a future with you, and that's when you decided I was your soulmate? That's rich, Maya. That's really rich." "It's not like that." Her voice rose, defensive now. "When he asked me to move, I had to confront what I really wanted, what really mattered to me. And it wasn't him, David. It was you. It's always been you." I stood then, needing to move, needing distance from her desperation. I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights that had kept me company during countless sleepless nights over the past 6 months. How many times had I stood at this window, wondering what she was doing, whether she thought of me, whether she regretted her choice. Now she was here, claiming regret, claiming revelation, claiming love. And all I felt was a profound exhaustion mixed with something darker, a need for truth that she still wasn't giving me. "Let me ask you something," I said, still looking out the window. "If Brandon had wanted to stay here, if he'd never gotten that job offer, would you be standing in my living room right now calling me your soulmate?" The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Maya's reflection in the window showed her face crumpling, but I didn't turn around. I'd spent too many nights analyzing every moment of our relationship, dissecting where things went wrong, blaming myself for not being enough. I'd finally climbed out of that hole of self-recrimination, and I wasn't about to let her pull me back in with selective truths and convenient timing. "That's not fair," she said quietly. "You're asking me to predict an alternate reality." I turned to face her then, and something in my expression made her take a step back. "No, Maya. I'm asking you to be honest with me for the first time in months. Maybe for the first time in years. When did you start sleeping with Brandon? And don't say it was after you moved out." Her face went pale. "David." "The truth," I said firmly. "You owe me that much." "When?" She sank back onto the couch, and I watched her internal struggle play out across her features. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. 3 months before I left. It started at the company retreat in March. March. I thought back to that time, remembering how she'd come home from that retreat glowing, energized, more affectionate than she'd been in months. I'd been so relieved to have her attention again that I'd never questioned it. The memory made me feel physically sick. 3 months, I repeated. You looked me in the eye every day for 3 months, let me make love to you, planned our summer vacation with me, all while you were sleeping with him. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I hated myself every day, but I couldn't stop. It was like an addiction. The guilt was eating me alive, which is why I finally asked for the break. I couldn't keep lying to you. So you just changed the type of lie, I said coldly. Instead of lying by omission, you lied by telling me you needed to find yourself when what you really needed was to move in with your boyfriend without the inconvenience of a husband. She was crying hard now, her whole body shaking. Part of me wanted to comfort her. 8 years of conditioning don't disappear overnight, but a stronger part of me remained rooted in place, observing her breakdown with clinical detachment. Did you love him? I asked. She looked up at me, mascara streaking her cheeks. I thought I did. But it wasn't real love, David. It was infatuation, escape, a fantasy. What we have, what we had, that's real love. The kind that lasts, that matters. Had, I emphasized again. Past tense. Because whatever we had died when you made the choice to betray it. Not once in a moment of weakness, but repeatedly, deliberately, for 3 months before you even had the courage to leave. People make mistakes, she cried out, her voice desperate. I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed your trust. But don't people deserve second chances? Don't years of marriage count for something? We said vows, David. For better or worse. I almost laughed at that. You want to quote our vows? The ones where we promised to forsake all others? Those vows. She stood again, wrapping her arms around herself. I want to make this right. Tell me what I need to do, and I'll do it. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. I'll sign a post-nuptial agreement, I'll quit my job, Why did Brandon leave? I interrupted, the question that had been nagging at me finally crystallizing. You said he got a job offer in Seattle, but you made it sound like he left. Did he break up with you, Maya? Is that why you're really here? The color drained from her face, and I knew I'd hit the mark. He didn't just get a job offer, did he? I pressed. What really happened? She turned away from me, her shoulders hunched. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear her. He met someone. A woman at his new company during the interview process. He said he wanted a fresh start in Seattle, without complications from his old life. And there it was. The truth I'd been circling around since she appeared at my door. She wasn't here because she'd realized I was her soulmate. She was here because Brandon had done to her exactly what she'd done to me. So he dumped you, I said flatly. He found someone new and exciting, and suddenly you were the one being left behind. And then you remembered good old reliable David, still living in the apartment you abandoned, probably still pining for you. Is that about right? No. She whirled around, her face flushed with anger and shame. That's not why I'm here. Yes, Brandon ended things, and yes, it hurt. But it also woke me up. It made me realize what I'd put you through, how it felt to be on the receiving end of that kind of betrayal. I've spent the last 3 weeks thinking about nothing but you, about us, about what I threw away. 3 weeks, I said quietly. You've been single for 3 weeks, and that's how long it took you to realize I'm your soulmate? Not during the 6 months you lived with Brandon. Not during the 3 months before that when you were sneaking around behind my back. But 3 weeks after he dumped you for someone else. She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up my hand to stop her. I was tired of her explanations, her justifications, her carefully constructed narrative that positioned her as the enlightened prodigal wife returning home after learning life's hard lessons. Let me tell you what I think happened, I said, my voice calm and measured. I think you and Brandon had a fun affair that made you feel young and desired. I think you convinced yourself that leaving me was the right thing to do, that you were following your heart or discovering yourself or whatever other platitudes you used to justify betrayal. I think living with him was exciting for a while, until the reality set in that he was a real person with real flaws, not just a fantasy escape from your real life. I moved closer to her, and she looked up at me with desperate, hopeful eyes that made me feel nothing but pity. I think when he told you he was leaving for Seattle without you, you panicked. Because suddenly you were facing being alone, truly alone, maybe for the first time in your adult life. And that scared you more than anything. So you thought back to who would take you back, who loved you enough to overlook the unforgivable, who was safe and familiar and stupid enough to believe your story about realizations and soulmates. Tears streamed down her face. That's not true. David, that's not true. Isn't it? I challenged. Look me in the eye and tell me that if Brandon had asked you to marry him instead of leaving for Seattle, you wouldn't be planning a future with him right now instead of standing in my living room. She couldn't. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked away. The silence stretched between us, filled with everything she couldn't say and everything I already knew. I thought so, I said softly. The revelation seemed to deflate Maya completely. She collapsed back onto the couch, no longer bothering to wipe away her tears. I should have felt victorious, having cornered her with the truth she'd been dancing around. Instead, I just felt hollow, like I was watching the final act of a tragedy I'd already memorized. I sat back down in the armchair, maintaining the physical distance that mirrored the emotional chasm between us. I have another question for you, Maya. When was the last time you talked to Brandon? Her head snapped up, eyes widening. What? Why does that matter? Humor me. When was the last time you spoke to him? She bit her lip, another tell I recognized from years of reading her expressions. A few days ago, he called to arrange picking up some things he'd left at my apartment. Your apartment, I noted. Not our apartment. So you kept Brandon's place after the split. He's moving to Seattle. He didn't need it anymore. I'm still paying rent there. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. So let me make sure I have the timeline straight. Brandon dumps you and tells you about Seattle 3 weeks ago. You've been living in his apartment since then. And you've talked to him as recently as a few days ago. When exactly in this timeline did you have your grand epiphany about me being your soulmate? She squirmed under my gaze. I don't understand what you're trying to. I'm trying to understand when you decided to come back to me, Maya. Was it before or after your most recent conversation with Brandon? Because I'm starting to wonder if maybe you've been trying to work things out with him this whole time, and coming here is your plan B. That's not, I wouldn't, she stammered, but the guilt was written all over her face. I stood up and walked to my desk, pulling out my phone. You know what's funny? Sarah told me something interesting last week. She said you'd asked her not to tell me about Brandon leaving. She found that odd, wondered why you'd want to keep that from me if you were supposedly having this come-to-Jesus moment about our marriage. Maya's face had gone white. David, I can explain. I bet you can, I said, scrolling through my messages. Sarah also mentioned that you'd asked her if I was seeing anyone. She told you I wasn't, that I'd been pretty much a hermit since you left. Did that factor into your decision to come here tonight? Knowing I was alone, probably lonely, probably vulnerable. Stop it, she whispered. You're making me sound like some kind of calculating monster. Aren't you? I looked at her directly, and she flinched. Let's be real here, Maya. You didn't come here out of love or regret or some sudden spiritual awakening. You came here because Brandon rejected you, you're about to lose his apartment, and you're scared of being alone. I'm the safe option. The backup plan. The guy who loved you unconditionally for 8 years and probably still does, right? Isn't that what you thought? She was sobbing openly now, but I felt nothing. 6 months ago, her tears would have broken me. Now they just seemed like another manipulation tactic, another tool in her arsenal. Here's what I think happened in your last conversation with Brandon, I continued, the pieces falling into place as I spoke. I think you tried one more time to convince him to stay, or to take you with him to Seattle. I think he made it clear that door was completely closed. And that's when you remembered me. Not 3 weeks ago when he first left you, but a few days ago when you finally accepted he was gone for good. Please stop, she begged, but I was done protecting her feelings. Tell me I'm wrong, I challenged. Tell me you weren't texting or calling Brandon, trying to fix things with him. Tell me he didn't shut you down completely, leaving you with no other option but to come crawling back to the husband you abandoned. She couldn't. She sat there, crying into her hands, her whole body shaking. And I felt nothing but a grim satisfaction at having exposed the truth. I loved him, she finally said, her voice muffled by her hands. I did love him, David. And yes, when he ended things, I tried to get him back. I begged him to reconsider, to give us another chance. But he was done with me. He told me I was too much drama, too complicated, that he wanted a fresh start with someone who didn't come with baggage. She looked up at me, and I saw genuine pain in her eyes, but it wasn't pain over losing me. It was pain over losing him. And that's when I realized what I'd done to you, she continued. Feeling that rejection, that abandonment, it made me understand what you must have gone through when I left. It gave me perspective I didn't have before. So I should be grateful that your boyfriend dumped you because it taught you empathy. I asked incredulously. That's your pitch. You hurt me, but it's okay because eventually someone hurt you too, and now you get it. I know how it sounds, she said desperately. But pain can be a teacher, David. I learned something about myself, about what I really want. Yes, I tried to make it work with Brandon first. Yes, I came here after that failed. But that doesn't mean my feelings for you aren't real. Can't you see that I'm being honest with you now? I'm not hiding anything anymore. You're only being honest because I cornered you, I pointed out. Every truth I've gotten from you tonight has been extracted, not volunteered. You came here ready to sell me a fairy tale about realizations and soulmates, and only when I pushed did you admit any of this. She had no response to that. She just sat there, looking smaller and more defeated by the minute. I pulled out my phone again, and her eyes tracked the movement nervously. I want to try something, I said. An experiment, if you will. Let's see how deep your feelings for me really go. What are you doing? I'm going to send Brandon a message, I said, watching her face carefully. From your phone. Something like, I miss you. I made a mistake. Can we please talk? The panic that flashed across her face told me everything I needed to know, but I wanted to hear her say it. You can't do that, she cried, lunging forward as if to grab the phone from my hand. Why not? I asked calmly, holding it out of reach. If you're really here because you realized I'm your soulmate, if you're really done with Brandon and ready to fight for our marriage, why would it matter if I sent that message? It wouldn't work anyway, right? Because you're over him and fully committed to fixing things with me. She stared at me, trapped. David, please. Don't do this. That's what I thought, I said, putting my phone away. You're still in love with him. You're still hoping he'll change his mind. I'm just the consolation prize, the safety net, the backup plan you can fall back on while you wait for him to realize he made a mistake. No. She was on her feet now, desperate and cornered. That's not true. I'm not in love with him anymore. But that doesn't mean I want you to sabotage any possibility of closure. That message would be cruel and manipulative and dishonest. I finished. Ironic, coming from you. But fine, I won't send it. I don't need to. You've already shown me what I needed to see. She reached for me, and I stepped back. David, I came here tonight because I want to fix our marriage. Yes, I still have feelings for Brandon. I'm not going to lie about that anymore. But feelings fade. What we built together, that's real and lasting. That's what I want to preserve. You can't have both, I said quietly. You can't keep a door open to Brandon while asking me to take you back. That's not how this works. Maya stood frozen in my living room, and I could see the moment she realized her carefully constructed appeal was crumbling beyond repair. But I wasn't done yet. There was one more truth I needed to extract, one final test to confirm what my gut had been telling me all along. I want you to do something for me, I said, pulling out my phone again. Call Brandon. Right now. With me listening. Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, fear, calculation. Why would I do that? Because I want to hear you tell him it's really over. I want to hear you tell him you're done, that you're going back to your husband, that you don't want any form of relationship with him anymore. If you're serious about us, about fixing our marriage, that should be easy. I don't think it's late, and he's probably. It's 9:45 on a Tuesday, I interrupted. He's not asleep. Make the call, Maya. She looked at her purse where her phone was, then back at me. This is manipulative. This is a boundary, I corrected. If you want any chance of me even considering reconciliation, I need to know you're willing to close the door on Brandon completely. Not just tell me you are, but actually do it. So call him. She reached for her purse with shaking hands, pulled out her phone, and stared at the screen. I watched her thumb hover over the screen, watched her face cycle through emotions. And then I saw it, the incoming message notification that lit up her screen. Her face went pale, and she quickly tried to hide the phone, but I'd already seen enough. Who is that? I asked, though I already knew. No one. It's nothing. I held out my hand. Phone. Now. David, you're being ridiculous. Phone, or get out of my apartment. Your choice. Something in my voice must have convinced her I wasn't bluffing. She hesitated, then slowly handed me her phone. The message was still on the screen, from a contact labeled with just a heart emoji. But when I opened the thread, I could see the entire conversation history with Brandon. I scrolled through messages from earlier that day, from yesterday, from the day before. My anger grew with each exchange I read. Miss you baby, from 3 days ago. Thinking about last night, from Brandon yesterday. When can I see you again? From Maya this morning. I looked up at her, and she had the decency to look ashamed. Last night? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. You slept with him last night, and you're here now telling me I'm your soulmate. It was a goodbye, she whispered. One last time, for closure. I kept scrolling, my stomach turning as I read weeks of messages. They went back to before Brandon supposedly ended things, continuing right up through her supposed epiphany about our marriage. He didn't dump you, I said, the final piece clicking into place. You two are still together. This whole thing, coming here tonight, was what? Some kind of test? Insurance? Or were you planning to keep us both on the hook? It's complicated, she started, but I cut her off with a laugh, a real one this time, bitter and harsh. No, Maya. It's actually very simple. Brandon got the job offer in Seattle. He doesn't want a long-distance relationship, but he also doesn't want to fully let you go until he's settled there and knows if his new romance works out. So he suggested you try to reconcile with me, your safety net, while keeping things open with him. Am I close? Her silence was confirmation enough. The messages, I continued, scrolling more. He's been coaching you. Tell him about the soulmate stuff. Don't mention we're still talking. Get him to take you back before I leave next month. This has all been a game to you both. It wasn't like that, she protested weakly. At first, maybe, but when I came here tonight, I meant what I said. I do want to fix things with you. While keeping Brandon as your backup plan. I held up the phone, showing her their messages. You texted him before coming here, heading to David's now. Wish me luck. And his response, remember, you deserve to be happy. Make him understand that. This is disgusting, Maya. This is so far beyond anything I imagined. She reached for her phone, but I pulled it back. There was one more message I needed to see, the one that had just come in. I opened it. How'd it go? Is he taking you back? Call me after, I want to hear everything. I felt something break inside me, the final strand of whatever connection had kept me tethered to this woman. It wasn't love anymore, hadn't been for a while. It was habit, history, the ghost of who we used to be. But this calculated manipulation, this breathtaking betrayal, finally killed it. Get out, I said quietly, handing her back the phone. David, please. Get out of my apartment. Get out of my life. We're done. Not taking a break, not separating, done. I'll have my lawyer send you divorce papers. But we can work through this. She was panicking now, real fear in her eyes. I know I messed up, but we can get past this. People recover from worse. We can. There is no we, I said firmly. There hasn't been a we since you started sleeping with Brandon a year ago. Probably longer. I was just too blind to see it. But I see it now, Maya. I see you clearly for the first time, and I don't like what I'm looking at. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. You don't mean that. You're angry, and you have every right to be, but when you calm down. I am calm, I interrupted, gently but firmly removing her hand from my arm. This is me calm. This is me finally thinking clearly after 6 months of torture, wondering what I did wrong, how I could have saved our marriage. But I didn't do anything wrong, Maya. You did. You made a choice, then another choice, then hundreds of small choices that led us here. And now I'm making a choice. I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing my dignity. I'm choosing to not be your backup plan. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. That was the most shocking part. Not anger anymore, not even hurt. Just a profound emptiness where my love for her used to be. Please, she begged. Don't throw away 8 years over a mistake. I love you, David. I really do love you. No, I said, walking to the door and opening it. You love security. You love having options. You love the idea of me, stable, reliable, forgiving David who'll always be here when everyone else lets you down. But you don't love me. If you did, you wouldn't have cheated. You wouldn't have left. You wouldn't have come here tonight while still sleeping with Brandon and plotting your next move. She stood in the middle of the room, crying, broken, lost. A small part of me wanted to comfort her, that old instinct dying hard. But a stronger part of me, the part that had survived these 6 months, that had rebuilt itself from the ruins of our marriage, knew better. What am I supposed to do? She asked, her voice small and childlike. That's not my problem anymore, I said. Maybe go to Brandon. Maybe figure out how to be alone. Maybe actually do the self-reflection you claimed to need when you left me. I don't know, and honestly, I don't care. But you can't do it here. She gathered her purse with shaking hands, walking toward the door like she was heading toward her own execution. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. I really did love you once, she said softly. Before everything got complicated. Those first years, that was real. Maybe it was, I acknowledged. But that person you loved, and the person who loved you back, they don't exist anymore. You killed them when you made your choices, and I buried them over these past 6 months. There's nothing left to salvage, Maya. She nodded, tears still falling, and stepped into the hallway. I watched her walk away, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor, growing fainter until they disappeared entirely. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for a long moment. My apartment was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Not the heavy, suffocating silence of loss and grief, but something lighter, cleaner. The silence of a chapter finally ending. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. Did Maya come see you? She told Mom she was going to try to fix things. Please tell me you didn't take her back. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd managed all night. Don't worry, I typed back. I didn't. It's finally over. I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights that had witnessed so many of my dark nights. Tomorrow I'd call my lawyer and start the divorce proceedings. Tomorrow I'd probably feel angry again, or sad, or any of the complicated emotions that come with endings. But tonight, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a year, free. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. Good. You deserve so much better. Come to dinner this weekend. I want you to meet my friend Jessica. No pressure, just friends. But she's wonderful, and she's recently single too. I laughed, shaking my head. It was too soon for that. Way too soon. But the fact that I could even imagine a future where I might be ready someday, that was progress. I looked around my redecorated apartment, at the space I'd reclaimed and made my own. It wasn't filled with memories of Maya anymore. It was filled with possibilities, with the life I was building for myself, piece by piece. The doorbell rang again, and my heart sank. I walked back to the door, ready to tell Maya once and for all that nothing she could say would change my mind. But when I opened it, it wasn't Maya standing there. It was my downstairs neighbor, Mr. Chen, holding a package. This was delivered to my place by mistake, he said, handing me a box. Figured you'd want it. Thanks, Mr. Chen. As I took the package, I noticed the return address. It was from my mother, probably sending me some of my childhood things she'd been threatening to clear out of her attic. Something about the normalcy of that, the continuation of life beyond the drama of the evening, made me smile. I closed the door for the final time that night, this time with certainty. Maya wouldn't be back. There was nothing left for her here, no opening she could exploit, no weakness she could prey upon. I opened the package from my mom and found old photos from college, from before I'd met Maya. There was one of me at graduation, grinning at the camera, my whole future ahead of me, full of hope and dreams and possibility. That person seemed like a stranger now, but maybe I could find my way back to him. Maybe I could rediscover who I was before Maya, before the betrayal, before the pain. My phone buzzed one more time. Against my better judgment, I checked it, half expecting some final plea from Maya. Instead, it was a text from my best friend, Marcus, who'd been checking on me regularly since the separation. Beer tomorrow night? No talking about her unless you want to. Just bros being brothers. Absolutely, I replied. Thanks, man. I set my phone down and looked around my quiet apartment one more time. 6 months ago, Maya had walked out of my life, leaving chaos and heartbreak in her wake. Tonight, she tried to walk back in, bringing more manipulation and lies. But I'd found something in these months of solitude. Myself. My strength. My worth. My ability to stand alone and be okay with it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, divorce lawyers, asset division, the awkwardness of mutual friends taking sides. But I'd face it all with clear eyes and a clear conscience, knowing I'd made the right choice. I'd chosen myself. And that, I realized, was the first truly honest choice I'd made in years. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I felt lighter than I had in months. The weight of false hope, of desperate longing, of clinging to something already dead, it had all evaporated the moment I closed that door. Maya had called me her soulmate, had begged for another chance, had promised to change. But I'd seen through the performance to the truth underneath. She was still in love with Brandon, still keeping her options open, still treating me like a safety net rather than a partner. And I'd had the strength to say no. That was the real victory, not in her leaving, or in exposing her lies, but in finally valuing myself enough to walk away from someone who didn't value me. I climbed into bed, and for the first time in 6 months, I fell asleep quickly, peacefully, without the usual tornado of thoughts and regrets. Because tonight, I'd closed a door that should have been closed months ago. And tomorrow, I'd start focusing on the doors that were opening.